Welcome to the All Central Podcast. I'm your host, Pastor Larry Kirk. I am joined today by the Brit from Baltimore, Pastor Jonathan Prothero. So good to have you, man.
Gracias.
We're going to be talking all things Abraham and Isaac today. And what's such a great message back in December. This is the new year, and but we wanted to kind of go back a little bit and talk a little bit about Abraham and that whole process again, because I think people get ideas about what that looked like, and you know, you specifically talk about a particular age that Isaac was in that moment, where our brains go. You know, my brain goes back to old school church, flannel board,
right?
You know, where they stick a little flannel board kid up, you know,
flannel graph
it. Yeah, they just slap him right on there.
Yeah,
and he looked like a child. But there's a lot to unwrap in that. So you know, going into the is there any specific holiday traditions that that you're going to be celebrating or celebrated this past year with your wife Amanda?
Any like traditions?
Yeah, do you guys have a specific thing now? You've only been married a year.
Well,
but still.
that's the beautiful thing. We kind of get to create them from scratch now. Everything that we do will eventually become a tradition. I tell you what we are doing Thursday morning is we're coming up to Thanksgiving, so we're going to do the turkey trot in the morning.
Turkey trot in the morning.
Yeah, that's going to be a fun one. I'm trying to start that as a tradition. Yeah. Amanda is less keen on implementing that as a tradition. Not so much. A trot, walk, we'll see what happens. But yeah, I don't know. We get to create something brand new, I guess, awesome. This year. I hadn't thought about that. That's a difficult question. What do you guys typically do?
I mean, you know, so around this time of the year, you know, Thanksgiving, I like to grab turkeys and smoke turkeys in a smoker. And
when you said grab turkeys, I had just for like 2 seconds image of you running around
grabbing a turkey,
hunting.
That wouldn't be beyond me though to do something like that.
Well, you've if you say so. But you are you talk up your smoking game, your turkey smoking game, and you do briskets. You a brisket man?
Yeah, I do. But I'm bigger into like the smoked turkey, the you know, like smoked pork butt. You know, get that nice Boston pork butt. Everybody laughs when I call it a pork butt, but that's what it's called. It's a Boston pork butt. Like, and then you just, the best bit. It's fall off, man. When, you know, after about 8 hours smoke, you know, about 4 hours into it, you wrap it. It starts to cook internally. You get it up to about 196, and then all of a sudden it falls off.
You're just geeking out, man. Geeking out. 196, 8 hours, 4 hours. Yeah.
So that's kind of my game, but we love that around this time of the year, holiday season, even Christmas. I'll do something special. But as far as like traditions that we've had with the kids over the years, nothing super special other than I will put lights on the tree and then walk away.
You're done.
I'm done because and it's not because I don't enjoy it. It's because I'm so OCD that when they start hanging ornaments and it's not in the right spot, I have to change it. And so I got reprimanded quite a few years for it.
Don't touch.
So don't touch.
Well, when we set up the building here is a massive project setting up for Christmas. Yeah. It's a lot of work. We have a storage unit, and it just like everything comes, and we spend 2 weeks kind of on and off decorating. But every year you have one project, which is the main tree, and no one else is allowed to touch the tree.
But those are not my words.
Larry
wouldn't mind anyone else doing the tree. It's just, maybe.
Anyone?
But it's my mom is the one who says nobody touches that tree except my son.
But that's because she knows.
Because she knows.
That's the OCD over there.
She takes advantage of my OCD.
Yeah. For like 2 days, that tree is this goes here and this one over here.
And everything's got to be perfect.
It's got to be perfect.
Yeah.
Oh, do you want to talk about that? need for perfection, and
I think we had that podcast at one time, didn't we? Didn't we talk about perfection a little bit?
We did open that up. Okay,
yeah.
We've had that therapy session.
Yeah, yeah. Maybe we need to go into that again because it didn't seem like it worked.
That's okay. That's okay. It's a process.
It's a process. Yeah,
process.
So when like leaves are falling off in my yard or whatever, I'm tired of, I don't want to do this anymore. Like, I don't want to go out there and rake leaves and bag them and take them to the dump anymore. So I want to hire somebody to do it. But before they come, what I'm doing is I'm blowing them in a pile for them already. Does that I know.
You're going to pay somebody to do the job, but you're pre-doing the job for them.
I am. And all they have to do is just come over and like, oh, this is going to be easy, and so in my front yard, we live in a cul-de-sac. So our front yard have a few trees there, 3 to be exact, that drop leaves. And so they'll be dropping in my yard. So I'll take the blower out and blow them all out in the street, so that when the wind comes, it blows them into everybody else's yard.
Who's that blowing leaves in my yard? Yeah, that's the pastor.
That's the pastor across the street. Yeah. He can't handle leaves on his lawn. That's so I'll blow them in a pile in the cul-de-sac. But again, I'm making it easy for the guys that come and get the leaves. Like they're just like, oh, this is easy.
Are you making it easy for them, or are you worried that if you don't blow them in a pile, they won't get all of the leaves?
Well, it could be a little bit of both, but maybe because leaves have this acid to them. They're acidic when they drop. So when they're on your lawn, that acid eats into your grass. And it'll kill your grass.
I didn't know this.
Yeah, it'll kill your grass. So that's why I do that. Just
I don't know. I've been up at your house, and there'll be like 4 or 5 boys getting a haircut from Pearl, awesome hairdresser. Yeah. And you'll be there with the vacuum cleaner with every 3 snips.
Every sleeve. Yeah, I'm like,
there's more hair that's going to fall on the floor.
Totally. But it's just I'm getting the hair that I can see at the moment. And
you like it clean.
Yeah, I like it clean. And they I think they get mad at me when I do it because sometimes they get a cheek sucked into the vacuum or something like that, but
a pair of scissors are gone. Yeah. There you go.
Yeah.
Right. So, oh my gosh. We should probably dive into
Let's do that.
Into the Old Testament before we talk about your cleaning habits too far.
Cleaning habits. Yeah, let's talk about what a great message. I mean, what a great message it was in 2022 to have that just be spoken to us through God's word and how you cracked it open for us. And I think it helped people a little bit too. It's specifically about their obedience and not just the sacrifice. I love how you talked about really the obedience part is what the main thing of that context of that scripture.
It definitely is, because sacrifice, anybody can sacrifice. The issue with sacrifice is sacrifice can mean anything to you.
Yeah.
But obedience can only mean one thing. So people say, but I sacrificed, but the greatest sacrifice you can give is one of obedience. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes we sacrifice, but we sacrifice the thing that we weren't asked to sacrifice. Mm-hmm. And then we say, but I offered up all of this money or all of this time or all of this effort, all of this energy into this project. And God's saying, but I asked you to do this.
Yeah.
And so, yes, you sacrifice, but even in your sacrifice, it was specifically disobedient. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes we can find ourselves serving God in a great sacrifice, but not in the obedient area that he's asked us to do it.
Yeah.
And that's the issue that Saul ran into. Yes, he did sacrifice. And Samuel says, but does God delight in sacrifice so much as he delights in obedience? Mm-hmm. And that's simply because our obedience is our greatest form of sacrifice.
It is. Because obedience, I think, when you think of sacrifice, you do think of, well, I am sacrificing this particular thing, but that's all. I guess the word would be relative for some people, because we could call it a sacrifice, but is it really?
Yeah, absolutely. Is it really?
Is it really?
And you could even sacrifice more than you're asked to.
Right.
But that wasn't what you were asked to do.
Right.
Like if you wanted to go above and beyond, okay, whatever. But I just asked you to do this.
Yeah, it's like a tithe, right?
Right.
So God says, tithe, bring the tithe into the storehouse that there may be meat in my house, all that. And see, well, I won't pour out a blessing upon you, that you don't have room enough to receive all that scripture there. But he says 10%. And yet we could say, well, maybe we're not doing 10%, but we're sacrificing this. We're sacrificing 2% or 3%, what we would call sacrifice, but that's not sacrifice.
Right. Yep. People will do that to me. They'll say, yeah, I don't tithe, but I give my time.
Yeah.
And I say, that's a beautiful sacrifice, but that's not being obedient to what you were asked to do.
Right.
Like the time is great. That's a wonderful thing to do, to give your time to serve. But if you want to be obedient to scripture, you need to tithe.
Yeah, because you can't serve God and mammon.
Exactly.
What Jesus said.
Yeah,
right?
you can't.
And mammon has a control on people, and I believe there's a reason why he requires 10%. I don't know. It's a good deal when you think about it. Mm-hmm. Here, we'll give you 10. You can have 90.
Yeah. That's the generosity of God, isn't it?
That's the generosity of God.
That's it. But that's the exact picture of the garden. Is you can have everything I've created, just don't touch this 1%.
Yeah.
And then we think of God as being stingy because he withholds the 1.
That's right.
And it's like, well, hold on. He's actually created the entire world for us.
That he's a taker and not a giver,
Yeah, it's a strange, it's a very myopic view, isn't it? It gets distorted quite quickly.
I think the enemy loves to use that too. Like that's a massive tool for the enemy, for us to see God as a taker. And specifically even in the message that you spoke, that here he is supposed to go sacrifice his son. And man, God's, you look at God in that moment as a taker and not a giver. But at the end of it, he just shows he is the giver. He's not the taker.
He is the giver. And that's the whole point of the story, isn't it? It kind of comes down to that one point. And like we were talking about obedience before, I think our obedience will be largely dependent on what kind of God we envision.
Yeah.
And so God is trying to reframe for Abraham what kind of God he is. Mm-hmm. And therefore his obedience will shift as he comes to know God better.
Yeah.
Because he thinks he's being asked to do one thing, and God in a sense rejects the sacrifice. He says, I don't want, stop what you're doing right now. Is exactly, that's great that there's a willingness in your heart, but that's not what I was asking for. Yeah. So you're having to relearn what kind of God I am.
Wasn't there, I'm trying to recall this, and I may be totally off, which is okay, but wasn't that during a time too where child sacrifice wasn't it was kind of not normal, but there was some norm to it?
Yeah, he certainly would have heard of it for sure. Yeah. It would have been around, ancient Sumerian culture, Assyrian culture, sorry. Yeah, absolutely. The prophets of Baal were around. There were all kinds of gods. Yeah. But that's just how gods functioned.
Yeah.
It was always sacrifice. Mm-hmm. So if you had a great harvest this year, how do you show your thankfulness to the gods for taking care of you, for the rain, for the sunshine, for the provision?
You bring that.
You bring an offering.
An offering, yeah.
But next year, if you have another great harvest, do you bring the same offering for 2 good years in a row, or do you bring a greater sacrifice? Well, you wouldn't bring the same, because well, hold on, I gave you another bountiful year. You have to bring more.
Yeah.
What if you have a 3rd year? Do you bring the same as the 2nd year or the 1st year? Well, no, you have to do more.
Yeah.
And so even if you have a good year, you'd always have to give more. The sense of feeling was, I need to sacrifice more. And the same thing is if you had a bad year, if there was famine in the land, if the crops were dying, well, the logical thinking is we must not have sacrificed enough last year. We did not please the gods with our sacrifice. So what do we have to do to fix that? Well, the answer is we give more.
Yeah.
So if you have a bountiful year, you give more. And if you have a bad year, you give more. And you can see the cycle, no matter how it turns out. You're always upping the ante to more. And eventually there's only so much food you can give away. And so sacrifices became, about cattle, or it became about vows of giving your time, or even, prophets of Baal,
cut themselves.
Your life source, your blood.
Yeah.
And to eventually your firstborn, give me your firstborn, because what's more precious to you?
Yeah.
Than your firstborn? What ultimate sacrifice? There cannot be any greater sacrifice than giving your firstborn in the psyche of a human being.
Sure.
And so you can see how you quickly get there as a civilization, and Abraham was raised in that. That's his world.
Yeah, that was his world, and I love how you framework the story where, you know, Isaac is in this spot, this, like he's walking up the hill, the mountain with his dad, getting ready to be the sacrificial lamb himself, and yet he's not this young lad that we picture in our minds, you know, going back to the flannel board story earlier.
Yeah,
he's not this little boy. He's possibly in his mid-20s to mid-30s at this particular moment, and and what he had to do is, I mean, I don't know, you know, my boys now are in their mid-20s, and they both could kick my tail. So see, I can't imagine.
I think it'd be a close 50-50.
Would you? Yeah. Well, I fight dirty, but but it would be, you know, it would be a tough stretch. Like in Abraham at this time, he's what? He's
114, something like that.
Yeah, like
he's up there.
Yeah, he's up there. So I would
yeah.
imagine Isaac's got one up on him, strength wise. So
yeah.
But for Isaac to go along with that, to me spoke volumes, not just about Abraham and the faith that Abraham had in that moment, but just Isaac.
Yes.
The willingness to do that.
Yeah. It reframes the whole story,
because that's not talked about a lot in the story. Like when we talk about the story, that's not talked about as much.
It isn't, and it's always surprising.
Yeah.
And look, we should say this: nobody knows for sure.
Sure.
So look, let me just put. I'm not saying like this was the age, and
that's right.
You just can't. That's not how ancient literature works. You can't do that. But I am saying that most expositions, if you read this, are saying that that they guess his age to be like you said, mid-20s, mid-30s. 37 is tradition. Okay. And that's based off the next chapter straight after is Sarah's age being 127, giving birth to Isaac at 90, which puts him literally in the next sort of scene, as it were. But you just never know how much time elapsed. Sure. But most people would place him around then. And I actually think the story makes more sense if he's an adult. Because if God asks the question, hey, I want you to go sacrifice your son, that's concerning.
Sure.
For most people. There's an issue
I would
there,
think so.
Right? Hey, I want you to go kill your child. Like no matter what happens, even if God resurrects Isaac, Abraham still has to walk off that mountain a child murderer. Doesn't matter what way you slice it.
How do you recover from that?
You can't. Right? How do you recover? You still have that image of slicing it. Okay, I won't go into detail, but you get it, right?
Sure.
And you like just because Jesus was resurrected doesn't mean the Romans get off the hook for killing him. Yeah, they still killed him. Yeah, and it was and they still have to face that responsibility, or you could say the Jews or whoever. But at the time he died,
they all played a part.
They all played a part simply because God resurrected and didn't absolve them of that, and simply because God possibly would have resurrected Isaac, wouldn't have absolved Abraham of that deed. So there's a massive issue there. But if Isaac is in his 30s and God is saying, hey, I want you to go sacrifice him, and I should pause there for a second and say the word sacrifice, there's so many different ways you can interpret that. It can mean the full spectrum of ways, simply from offer up to slaughter. And so there's real difficulty with that word in and of itself. But let's just assume he was saying slaughter. Let's just take that for granted. If he's in his 30s, that changes everything, because Isaac has to be willing, like you said. Yeah. Isaac could have simply said, no. Old man, I don't want to do that. Push him over and walk back down.
Self-preservation kicks in, right?
Yeah, exactly. You cannot take your boy up a mountain and kill him without some kind of willingness. Yeah. Especially if you're 100 years old.
How does that conversation start? And
it's right, Dad. Where's the lamb? Is how it starts.
Hey, we're going to walk up this mountain. We're just going to see what's up there, but just come with me. Why do you have a knife, Dad?
Yeah.
Why do you have a sword? Right. Whatever you had there.
And what's interesting is in the story, that's the one thing Isaac doesn't mention. He says, we have the wood, we have the fire.
Yeah.
And he's got a knife, but he doesn't mention the knife. It's like there's a knowing almost at that point.
Yeah.
And it's the beauty of the story is how sparsely the conversation between those two is written. It's, hey, where's the sacrifice? Don't worry, there'll be a lamb. The next scene is he's tying up Isaac. And
I can't imagine it being chatty going up the hill.
Yeah.
Just,
can you imagine the dad issues? Like, I got resurrected to life, but Dad, I'm sorry, I cannot get that image.
I can't get the image stabbing me. Yeah. Yeah. That's
yeah, so Hebrews 11 answers Abraham's thinking, but it doesn't deal with still many of the issues, and that's not what Hebrews is trying to do anyway. Hebrews was talking about Abraham's faith, so that's is dealing with a separate thing.
Yep.
And so but if he's in his 30s, well, the Christology imagery is so obvious, isn't it?
Sure.
Because if God is sending his son to die, but his son is fully knowing, fully willing, fully submissive,
fully submitted. Yep.
Well, now you have a very different picture from a father being a child murderer.
And I think you mentioned what is he, 33?
Well, I
mean, that's just speculative. That's
a bit of fun while I'm preaching. But you'd like to think, wouldn't you, that who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows at the end of the day?
Yeah.
It's a fun thought.
It's a fun thought.
Possibly, but yeah, I lost my train of thought there for a second. But now you have a father who so loved his God that he was willing to lay down his son's life. You have John 3:16 there all over again.
Yeah.
And you almost have the first picture of John 3:16. Yeah. And then it gets even better, is that you have a God that steps in and says, you don't offer the sacrifice, I offer the sacrifice. I will stand in his place at one point, at one time in history. In a sense, it's already been done because of, 1 Peter and the Hebrews, Christ was crucified before the foundations of the earth.
Yep.
It's been done in his heart. Mm-hmm. It'll be manifest at some point. But it is, you can see why Abraham was that man of faith.
Yeah.
And so there's so many dynamics. There's Abraham's idea of God being shifted and reformed. There's Isaac's willingness to lay down his life. Mm-hmm. There's Christology imagery of God saying, I will eventually be the person to take all of this place, everybody's sin, I will be the person. There's just all of these beautiful dynamics that come into this story, and it all shifts with that one thought of maybe he's not 8 years old, maybe he's 30. Then the whole thing changes.
The whole thing changes.
And I was speaking to my youth leaders the other day, and I said, that's how life works, by the way, if you'll allow me to exegete for a second, or to pull a hermeneutic out of this, that sometimes you only need one shift in the narrative to change everything you thought about your life and your story.
Yeah, so true. I'll tell you, I had a shift in the narrative in my own personal life where I was working for this company. I just recently gotten with the guys actually that I worked with at Fidelity Engineering.
Oh yeah, fun.
Which was so much fun. It was just a few weeks ago, and we had a dinner together, and it was just cool to catch up, just to hear their stories, where they are in life, all those things. But I had fallen off a ladder and separated my shoulder, and that was a big shift because all of my work was on a ladder and duct work and just putting stuff in and just using that part, so separated shoulder doesn't, lend itself for that kind of work at that moment. So I was off for a few weeks but during that few weeks, I'd just come in, I was working with the youth ministry anyway with Pastor Ron, and just in that process, that little shift of something that happened to me personally, like out of the blue, right? I'm a ladder guy. Like I don't, I'm pretty balanced. I'm not clumsy at all. I'm pretty, with athletic, that kind of thing. So that never bothered me. Heights never bothered me. Still don't today, but it just never. So I was always comfortable on a ladder. I'd walk a ladder across the thing so I didn't have to get down, take the ladder, move it. Like, so
Wow, that sounds so dangerous.
I was real comfortable. Yeah, it was. But I was real comfortable on it. But that narrative changed quickly for my life when I did that, and then in that 2-week window, God started to speak something to me and get a hold of my life, and that's when Pastor Ron, one thing, he just asked me, "Hey, what do you think about this? Do you think about coming into Master's Commission?"
Wow,
just one thing that happened in my life shifted that, and then one question to me shifted my whole life.
Wow.
My entire life. It changed forever from that moment.
One question.
And
that's that, but that's the beauty of all of our stories, isn't it? That with a change in narrative in how you view yourself.
That's right.
Or how you view God can change everything. And that's kind of how the story finishes. You know, he names it Yahweh Yara, which is that idea of on the mount of the Lord there is sight, there is revelation, there is a new way of seeing things.
Right. Yeah.
And so he's seeing his place in the story differently. He's seeing Isaac's place differently. He's seeing God differently. And that, you know, because of this one little thing, all it takes is, you know, particularly with young people who have such low self-esteem, if they can change the narrative about, you know, God loving them, it can change the whole way they've seen their life, the whole way they view how their parents treat them, how their friends treat them, the way that they talk to themselves. And so that beautiful, I've always loved that, just that simple thought of, my pastor used to say to me back in the day, he said, sometimes people are just one conversation away from changing their whole lives.
Yeah.
And that was just your story now.
Story. Yeah.
Like Pastor Ron had one conversation with you.
Changed it.
And it changed it. Yeah, absolutely. You were in the right place at the right time.
Yeah.
You know, timing was obviously everything. And then he came in with that prophetic word, just a simple question, which is essentially the same question that Abraham was asked, that Adam and Eve were asked, is where are you? Like, where are you right now?
And that's what you asked in your message. Where are you in your walk with God? And that's a great question for all the listeners right now, everybody listening or even watching. Where are you right now in your walk with God?
Yeah, don't you think that people struggle to just take 5 minutes to really meditate on that thought? Like,
of course,
it's just easier not to look at it sometimes, isn't it? I don't know.
Yeah, no, I think a lot of people. There's most people, not everyone. So don't in the comments and on YouTube, don't, you know, hey, that's not me.
Yeah,
most people don't like conflict. And when I say that, they don't like conflict with their own life. Like, they don't like to come up against something. There's a truth there that's going to be a little painful to digest.
Right.
So that question, that simple question, where are you in your walk with God, really kind of tests that a little bit.
Yeah.
Because I think they already know the answer, and so it's better to run from it than to engage in it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And sometimes, like, walk with God can be confusing. I think you can even simplify it down to very practical matters, like, where are you in your marriage? Where are you in your work? Where are you in what you actually want to accomplish this year in your life?
Yeah.
Are you talked about writing that book. It's 5 years later.
Right.
Have you even got a computer? You'd still the excuses of I don't have what I need.
Sure.
You know, or whatever it is. I'm pulling stuff out of the air, just riffing. But where are you is that deep existential question that all of us struggle with and face. And I think at one point in our life, either we get jaded or we get bitter, or we just stop thinking about it because it's like, I'm just in survival mode right now.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to get to the next paycheck, or I'm just trying to keep my kids from screaming so that my wife doesn't, or whatever it is. I don't know.
Sure. Could be a plethora of things.
Plethora.
You know?
Yeah, good word.
Could be a lot of things out there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think we're going to end with that, because I think it's a great for us to continue to, if you didn't hear the message, you can go back and watch this message. This message was in of November of 2022. So you're listening to this in 2023. Go back and listen to that message. I think it'll resonate with your heart and really deep dive into the question for your own personal thoughts in your own life, and meditating on it, like Pastor Jonathan's talking about, is, where are you in your walk with God?
Yeah, it's awesome. Yeah. It's the perennial question that Adam and Eve were asked when they fell. It's the first question ever asked in Scripture. God looks and says, "Where are you?" And He's not doing that for information.
Yeah.
It's a call to repentance in many ways.
Yeah.
And they both fail.
It's not like He didn't know.
It's not. There you are.
Oh,
no. He's not saying like, where are you physically located?
Yeah, that's right.
Like, where are you?
Where are you? It's deeper.
It's much, much deeper, and a great way to finish off the podcast, and for everybody to really maybe spend some time thinking about that.
Yeah, I think Pastor Jonathan's prayer and my prayer right now is for you to just to take over at the end of this, over the next 5 minutes, just take a little bit of time and spend that with the Lord, and deep dive into your heart and your soul, and just say, hey, you know what? Where am I with you, Lord? What does my walk look like today? I think that concludes this podcast. Yeah, and we hope that in some way that today this enriched your life.